Karen Blackwell sipped her coffee and checked her watch again. The school transport from the Lunar Educational Center should have returned 2 hours ago. Her son Dylan was usually good about sending a message if plans changed, but her comm unit remained silent. A small frown formed on her face as she called the school coordinator for the third time. "Ms. Blackwell, I understand your concern," said the tired voice of Principal Burton. "The lunar security team is reviewing the situation. All other students have been accounted for. We're treating this very seriously." Karen's mild annoyance was quickly turning into something colder and more focused. "Send me the security footage, now." "That's against protocol. The authorities have asked us to—" "I have Level 7 clearance with NASA's Deep Space Division," Karen interrupted. "Either you send me that footage in the next 5 minutes, or I make some calls that will have federal agents crawling through your filing cabinets by morning." The footage arrived 4 minutes later. Karen watched it 3 times. The grainy video showed Dylan separating from his tour group near the Lunar Geology Lab. Nothing unusual there. Her 16-year-old son had always been drawn to anything scientific. But what happened next made her blood freeze. 2 figures in unfamiliar uniforms approached him. After a brief conversation, they escorted him toward a restricted docking area. Dylan didn't appear frightened, just curious, as he often was. The timestamp showed this happened 6 hours ago. Karen made 3 calls. The first was to her supervisor at NASA, explaining she needed emergency family leave. The second was to Colonel Frank Mitchell, her former commanding officer from her military days. The third was to Dr. Diane Rodriguez, a brilliant xenolinguist, whose controversial theories about potential alien communication had ended her academic career 3 years ago. "They took my son," she told each of them, "and no one is doing anything about it." Within hours, Karen sat in a secured room at NASA headquarters with Colonel Mitchell, Dr. Rodriguez, and 3 grim-faced government officials. "We believe this may be first contact, Ms. Blackwell," said a woman who had introduced herself only as Agent Carter. "The uniforms and technology don't match anything in our databases. The lunar security sensors picked up unusual energy readings just before their shuttle departed." "How long until you go after them?" Karen asked. The officials exchanged glances. "We're establishing a task force to evaluate appropriate responses," said a gray-haired man. "This situation requires careful diplomatic consideration." "How long?" Karen repeated. "Best case scenario, 3 weeks to prepare a proper mission. We need to consider first contact protocols, defensive capabilities, communication strategies." Karen stood up. "My son will be halfway across the galaxy in 3 weeks. Ms. Blackwell, we understand your distress, but this is potentially the most significant moment in human history. We cannot risk interstellar incident because one boy wandered off during a field trip." She looked at them with cold eyes. "Then I won't take up any more of your time." Outside the meeting room, Colonel Mitchell caught up with her. "You're going after him yourself, aren't you?" "Wouldn't you?" Karen asked. The old soldier nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "A ship, supplies, and someone who can help me communicate if what took my son isn't human." "I know where to find the first 2, Mitchell said, "and it seems you've already found the third." He nodded toward Dr. Rodriguez, who was walking toward them. "They're going to talk while your son could be suffering," Dr. Rodriguez said, her dark eyes flashing with anger. "I've spent 7 years trying to convince people we're not alone. Now we have proof, and they're forming committees." Karen looked at the scientist. "I need someone who understands how non-human intelligence might communicate." "You need someone who isn't afraid to break rules," Rodriguez replied. "When do we leave?" 3 days later, Karen stood in a maintenance hangar at the edge of NASA's Johnson Space Center. Before her was the NC-1701 Pathfinder, an experimental scout ship designed for long-range reconnaissance. Its sleek hull gleamed under the hangar lights, newly modified with parts that had been requisitioned through Karen's supply chain clearance. "She's ready," said Mitchell, walking up beside her. "Stealth systems upgraded, life support doubled, and I called in some favors to get you the new photon defense array. It's still in testing, but it works." "Navigation?" Karen asked. "Programmed with the coordinates from the lunar sensor logs. They lead to the Epsilon Eridani system. How much trouble are you in for helping me? Mitchell smiled grimly. Less than you. Your clearance has been revoked as of this morning. In about 20 minutes, security will realize this ship is preparing for unauthorized launch. Karen nodded. Thank you, Frank. Bring your boy home, he said, and try to come back yourself. Inside the ship, Dr. Rodriguez was already strapped into one of the 4 acceleration couches. The other 2 seats were occupied by people Karen had carefully selected. Alan Beck, a medical doctor who had served with her in the military, and Lydia Wells, a brilliant engineer who had helped design the Pathfinder's propulsion system. Pre-launch checks complete, Lydia reported. We have about 15 minutes before they notice the reactor signature. Karen took her seat at the command console. With practiced efficiency, she initiated the launch sequence and opened a communication channel. Houston Control, this is NC-11701 Pathfinder. We are initiating emergency departure for special operation. Authorization code, Mitchell 77 Delta. There was a moment of confused silence before a voice responded. Pathfinder, we have no scheduled launches. Stand down immediately. Karen closed the channel and accelerated the launch sequence. Strap in, she ordered. This might get rough. The hangar doors were still opening when the Pathfinder lifted off, its engines glowing blue in the early morning darkness. Alarms blared across the facility, but by the time response teams mobilized, the ship was already breaking atmosphere, accelerating hard toward the stars. As Earth shrank behind them, Karen opened the ship's log and made a single entry. Pursuing. Missing cargo. Expected return date when the cargo is secured. Dr. Rodriguez looked over at her. They'll court-martial you when we return, only if we return without Dylan, Karen replied, her eyes fixed on the navigation display where a small dot indicated their destination. If I bring him back safe, they can throw me in prison for the rest of my life. I really don't care. The ship accelerated to maximum speed, its experimental engines pushing the boundaries of human technology. As they prepared for the first jump to faster-than-light travel, Karen thought about Dylan, his curious eyes, his endless questions about the stars, his excitement when he was selected for the lunar program. Hold on, Dylan, she whispered as the stars around them blurred. Mom's coming. The Pathfinder emerged from its 3rd jump point at the edge of the Epsilon Eridani system. The ship's engines hummed quietly as Karen studied the sensor readings. After 7 days of travel, they had reached their destination. She had barely slept during the journey, spending most of her time reviewing the ship's systems and planning for every possible scenario. Scan complete, Lydia announced from the engineering station. There's a lot of activity in the outer asteroid belt. Energy, signatures unlike anything I've seen before. Karen tapped her console, bringing up a magnified view of the asteroid field. Hidden among the tumbling rocks was a structure too regular to be natural. It was built into a large asteroid, with docking ports and communication arrays extending from its surface. It's a station, Dr. Rodriguez said, leaning forward, and those smaller objects around it are ships. None of them match known human designs. Life signs? Karen asked. Alan checked his medical scanner. Difficult to say. There are biological readings, but they don't match human patterns. Whatever lives on that station isn't from Earth. Karen felt a chill run down her spine. Despite suspecting it from the beginning, having confirmation that they were dealing with aliens made the situation more real. She pushed aside her fear and focused on the mission. Can you detect any human life signs, anything that might be Dylan? Alan adjusted his sensors. There's a section in the lower part of the station with readings that could be human, but I can't be certain from this distance. We need to get closer, Karen said. If we approach directly, they'll detect us, Lydia warned. Karen studied the asteroid field. Then we don't approach directly. Those rocks will give us cover. She took manual control of the ship and guided it into the asteroid belt, using the larger rocks to mask their approach. The Pathfinder's enhanced stealth systems helped hide them from detection as they drew closer to the alien station. When they were close enough to get clear scans, Alan confirmed, I'm reading at least 15 human life signs aboard the station. One of them could be Dylan. Karen felt a surge of hope mixed with anger. They've taken more than just my son. Dr. Rodriguez had been studying the communication signals coming from the station. I'm starting to decode their language patterns. They call themselves the Vrex. They appear to be some kind of intermediaries or traders. Trading what? Karen asked. Rodriguez's expression darkened. From what I can tell, they're trading people, humans. The signals mention adaptive specimens and neural compatibility scores. Karen's hands tightened on the controls. We're going in. Lydia, how are those modifications to the ship's weapons holding up? The photon defense array is at full capacity. We also have the tactical missiles Colonel Mitchell added. Not much against a military vessel, but this looks like a trading post, not a warship. Karen nodded. We'll need a distraction. Then a small team can board the station to find Dylan and the others. They spent the next 6 hours observing the station's patterns and planning their approach. Karen noticed that supply ships arrived at regular intervals, following specific routes through the asteroid field. They would use this to their advantage. The next supply ship should arrive in 30 minutes, Karen said. We'll use its approach as cover, then create a diversion on the far side of the station. When the supply ship appeared, the Pathfinder slipped in behind it, matching its speed and trajectory perfectly. As the supply ship docked, Karen launched 2 tactical missiles toward storage tanks on the far side of the station. The resulting explosions weren't designed to cause major damage, just confusion. Alarms blared throughout the station as the Pathfinder docked at an emergency airlock, away from the main disturbance. Karen, armed with a standard NASA-issue sidearm and wearing a light pressure suit, led the boarding party. Dr. Rodriguez came with her to translate, while Alan and Lydia remained on the ship. The interior of the station was dimly lit with reddish lights. The air was breathable but had a strange, sweet smell. Karen checked her handheld scanner, following the human life sign readings deeper into the station. They encountered their first alien in a curved corridor. The Vrex was taller than a human, with scaled skin and a long snout filled with sharp teeth. It hissed in surprise at seeing them, reaching for a device on its belt. Karen fired her weapon before it could use the device. The stun setting dropped the alien to the floor. Can you understand their system? Karen asked, pointing to a control panel on the wall. Dr. Rodriguez studied the strange symbols. Enough to get by. The human life signs are being held 2 levels down. Some kind of processing area. They moved cautiously through the station, avoiding patrols of agitated Vrex responding to the explosions. When they reached the holding area, they found cells containing confused and frightened humans of various ages. Some appeared to have been there for weeks or longer. Karen moved from cell to cell, searching for Dylan. She found him in the last chamber, sitting calmly on a bench. When he saw her, his eyes widened in disbelief. Mom? How did you get here? Karen used the access codes Rodriguez had decoded to open the cell. I borrowed a ship. Are you hurt? Dylan shook his head. They've been studying me, running tests. They said I have unique neural patterns they've never seen before. Karen hugged him tightly, then pulled back. We need to move. We're taking everyone with us. As they freed the other human captives, a voice spoke in heavily accented English from behind them. Impressive for primitives. Karen turned to see a larger Vrex wearing ornate armor. The station commander, she guessed. You have committed an act of war against the Taurian Confederacy, the commander said. This facility is under protected status. You kidnapped my son, Karen replied coldly. And these other people. On my world, that's an act of war too, the commander hissed. Your world is primitive, it has no standing in the Confederacy. Then maybe it's time we introduced ourselves properly. Karen raised her weapon. These people are coming with me. You're going to give us safe passage back to our ship. And why would I do that? The commander asked. Because I've set charges. Throughout your station, cooperate and I'll give you the disarm codes before we leave. The commander studied her, reptilian eyes blinking slowly. You are bluffing. Karen tapped her comm unit. Lydia, perform test detonation in Cargo Bay 3. A distant explosion shook the station. The commander's scales seemed to pale. Still think I'm bluffing? Karen asked. Now we're leaving with these people, and you're coming with us as insurance. The rest of your crew can evacuate if they choose. As they moved through the station toward the Pathfinder, alarms continued to sound. The commander ordered his troops to stand down, his eyes never leaving Karen. "Who are you?" he asked finally. "What authority do you represent?" Karen kept her weapon steady. "I'm Dylan Blackwell's mother. That's all the authority I need." The Pathfinder moved through space faster than any human vessel before it. Karen had transferred most of the rescued humans to the ship's cargo hold, which Lydia and Alan had converted into temporary living quarters. The Vrex commander, who called himself Scar, was secured in the ship's small brig. Only Dylan remained on the bridge with Karen, watching as the stars streaked by. "Where are we going?" Dylan asked. He looked tired but unharmed from his captivity. "According to the station's records, you were going to be transferred to a place called Outpost Krell 9 in the Tau Ceti system," Karen replied. "It's a trade hub, where they send their specimens for distribution." Dylan nodded slowly. "They said I was special, that my brain worked differently than most humans they'd studied." Karen's hands tightened on the controls. "They've been studying humans for a while, it seems." Dr. Rodriguez entered the bridge, holding a data tablet. "I've learned more about the Taurian Confederacy from our guest in the station's database. It's a vast empire spanning multiple star systems. The Vrex are just one of many species under their control." "What do they want with humans?" Karen asked. "Resources," Rodriguez said. "Not natural resources like minerals, but biological ones. Different species have different mental abilities. Humans are prized for our adaptability and problem-solving skills." "They're slavers," Karen said flatly. Rodriguez nodded. "Essentially, yes. They don't see it that way, though. In their view, they're just harvesting useful traits from primitive worlds. It's been their practice for thousands of years." Karen turned to Dylan. "Get some rest. We'll reach Tau Ceti in 14 hours. After Dylan left, Karen asked the question that had been bothering her. "Why didn't they just invade? If they've been watching us for years, why the secret abductions?" "According to Scar, there are rules in the Confederacy about harvesting from pre-contact worlds," Rodriguez explained. "Limited sampling only, until a species develops interstellar travel. Then they can claim the entire population as a subject species." Karen frowned. "So they've been waiting for us to develop faster than light travel before they enslave us all?" "That's about right," Rodriguez confirmed. "And they estimate we're only a few decades away." Karen turned to the tactical display. "Then we don't have much time." When they arrived at the Tau Ceti system, they were greeted by an incredible sight. Outpost Krell 9 was an enormous space station, dwarfing anything humans had built. It resembled a giant wheel with spokes extending from a central hub, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. Ships of various sizes and designs moved around it. "How do we approach this?" Lydia asked from the engineering station. "We can't fight our way in this time." Karen studied the station. "We need to understand what we're dealing with first." She turned to the communication panel. "Bring Scar to the bridge." When the Vrex commander arrived, his scales had dulled from their original vibrant green to a sickly yellow. "You don't understand what you've done," he said. "The Confederacy will punish your entire species for this transgression." "Tell me about Outpost Krell 9, Karen demanded. "How do ships dock there? What kind of security do they have?" Scar blinked his reptilian eyes. "You cannot possibly think to infiltrate Krell 9. It is the largest trade hub in this sector with representatives from dozens of worlds." "Answer the question," Karen said, her voice cold. Something in her tone made Scar comply. "All vessels must transmit identification codes and cargo manifests before approaching. Security is managed by the Taurians themselves, not contracted species like us." "And what are these Taurians like?" Karen asked. "They are the ruling species of the Confederacy," Scar replied. "Large, powerful, and very traditional. They value order above all else." Dr. Rodriguez, who had been working at her console, suddenly looked up. "Karen, I think we have a problem. Or maybe an opportunity." She pulled up a communication she had intercepted from the station. When we took over the Vrex outpost, Scar filed a report claiming you were a human authority figure. To save face, he registered you as the new regional governor of the Epsilon Eridani patrol sector. He did what? Karen looked at the Vrex commander in disbelief. It is standard procedure, Scar said defensively. When an outpost changes hands, new leadership must be registered. The alternative was to admit I was defeated by primitives, which would result in my execution, Rodriguez continued. According to Confederate law, capturing an outpost and declaring authority based on familial connections constitutes a legitimate claim of territorial governance. They think we're representatives of an emerging power in human space. Karen stared at the data in disbelief. So they think I'm some kind of official? Essentially, Rodriguez said. And they're expecting representatives of the new human authority of Epsilon Eridani to arrive for trade negotiations. Karen was silent for a long moment. Can we use this? Rodriguez nodded slowly. I think we can. This gives us a legitimate reason to dock at the station. We can gather intelligence and search for information about other human captives. We'll need to look the part, Karen said. She turned to Scar. You're going to tell us everything about how Confederate officials behave, what they wear, and how they speak. Our lives depend on it, which means your life depends on it too. Hours later, the Pathfinder approached Outpost Krell 9, transmitting the code Scar had provided. Karen wore a makeshift uniform created from materials aboard the ship, designed to look official yet foreign to Confederate eyes. Dylan, who had insisted on coming despite Karen's objections, stood beside her in similar attire. Dr. Rodriguez and Alan completed their small delegation. Approaching vessel, identify yourself, came a voice over the comm system. The translator Rodriguez had created from the VREX database converted the alien language to English. This is Governor Karen Blackwell of the new human authority of Epsilon. Eridani, Karen replied, following the script Scar had taught her. We are here to establish diplomatic relations and discuss trade opportunities. There was a pause before the response came. Welcome, Governor Blackwell. You are cleared to dock at Bay 17. Representatives will meet you there. As the Pathfinder glided toward the assigned docking bay, Karen turned to her small crew. Remember the plan. We're here to gather intelligence and find out if there are more humans aboard. Lydia stays with the ship and keeps it ready for immediate departure. Dylan stays by my side at all times. Nobody takes unnecessary risks. Dylan nodded seriously. What if they realize we're not really officials? Karen checked the small weapon hidden under her uniform. Then we go to Plan B. What's Plan B? Dylan asked. Karen gave him a grim smile. Run very fast back to the ship while shooting anything that tries to stop us. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud. Through the viewport, they could see aliens waiting for them in the docking bay. Tall, bovine-like creatures with elaborate horns and richly decorated robes stood at the front. Taurians, the rulers of the Confederacy. Karen took a deep breath. Ready? Dylan took her hand for a moment and squeezed it. Ready, Mom. The airlock doors opened, and Karen Blackwell, recently a NASA logistics specialist and now accidentally registered as a planetary governor, stepped forward to meet the representatives of an interstellar empire that had been harvesting humans like crops. Her smile was pleasant, but her eyes were calculating, noting every detail of the station's security as she walked. Welcome to Outpost Krell 9, the lead Taurian said through a translation device. We are most curious about your sudden emergence in Confederate space. I'm sure you are, Karen replied smoothly. We have much to discuss. The Taurian diplomatic quarters were spacious and decorated with strange artwork that seemed to celebrate conquest. Karen sat at a large table with Dylan beside her, facing 3 Taurian officials. Their massive bovine bodies made the chairs creak, and their horns were decorated with metal rings that clinked when they moved. Dr. Rodriguez and Alan stood behind Karen, trying to look official while carefully studying everything around them. Your emergence as a regional power is unexpected, said the lead Taurian, who had introduced himself as High Administrator Mograx. Our records indicated human civilization was still decades from achieving proper interstellar capability. Karen kept her face neutral. We prefer to keep certain developments private until we're ready to reveal them. Mograx's large nostrils flared. A wise approach. Still, protocol requires a full registry of your technological capabilities before formal trade can begin. And we will provide that information when we're ready, Karen replied firmly. For now, we're here to discuss the return of all human citizens currently held within Confederate space. The Taurians exchanged glances. We are not aware of any unauthorized retention of human subjects, Mograx said carefully. Karen placed a small data device on the table, one Rodriguez had prepared with information from the wreck station. This contains records of at least 37 humans taken from our world over the past year alone. I want them all returned immediately. Mograx studied the device without touching it. These would be research specimens collected under standard protocols for pre-contact species. They are not specimens, Karen said, her voice growing cold. They are citizens of Earth, and their collection was not authorized by our government. Tension in the room grew until Dylan spoke up unexpectedly. Hi, Administrator. I was one of those collected. The VREX told me the Confederacy values knowledge and logical process above all else. Is it logical to begin relations with a new species by taking their people without permission? Karen glanced at her son with pride. The Taurian seemed surprised by the young human's question. Your offspring presents an interesting perspective, Mograx said after a moment. Perhaps there has been a procedural oversight. We will investigate these claims. While you investigate, Karen said, we would like to tour your facility. As potential trading partners, we should understand your operations. The Taurians agreed, though Karen noticed they assigned 4 security officers to accompany them. As they toured the massive station, Dr. Rodriguez whispered translations of signs and conversations they overheard. They learned that Outpost Krell 9 served as a central processing point for resources from dozens of worlds, including what the Taurians called adaptive resources, living beings with desirable traits. During a visit to the station's central control section, Karen managed to place a small device under a console when the Taurians were distracted. The device, created by Lydia from parts found on the Pathfinder, would allow them to access the station's communication systems remotely. We've seen enough for today, Karen announced. We will retire to our ship to prepare formal diplomatic proposals. You are welcome to use the diplomatic quarters we have prepared, Mograx offered. Thank you, but we prefer our own accommodations, Karen replied. Cultural preferences. Back aboard the Pathfinder, Lydia activated the device Karen had planted. It's working. I'm accessing their central database now. The information they found was disturbing. The Taurian Confederacy had been observing Earth for over a century. They had determined that humans possessed unusual adaptability and creative, problem-solving skills that were rare among established spacefaring civilizations. The Confederacy had been harvesting small numbers of humans for study, but they were planning something much larger. They're preparing for a full harvesting operation, Rodriguez said, her voice shaking as she read the translated plans. Once they confirm we've achieved certain technological benchmarks, they'll classify Earth as ready for integration. Integration? Karen asked. Subjugation, Rodriguez clarified. They'll take millions of humans for distribution throughout Confederate space as workers, problem solvers, and pets. Karen's face hardened. Not if I can help it. She turned to the communication console. We need to warn Earth. Using the codes Colonel Mitchell had given her, Karen transmitted everything they had learned back to Earth using a secure channel that bounced between relay points, making it hard to trace. She included detailed information about Confederate technology, weaknesses they had observed, and suggestions for defensive preparations. Message sent, Lydia confirmed. Now we need to find the other humans and get out of here, Karen said. Their opportunity came the next day when they were invited to observe the processing of new resources arriving from the outer systems. The processing center was an enormous facility where beings from various worlds were sorted, evaluated, and prepared for transport. As they toured the facility with their Taurian guides, Alan's small scanner detected human life signs in a nearby section. 6 humans in the next chamber, he whispered to Karen. Karen nodded slightly and turned to Mograx. What's in that section? Nothing that would interest diplomatic representatives, Mograx said smoothly. Merely specimen processing. I insist on seeing it, Karen said. As a matter of cultural interest. The Taurians reluctantly led them to the chamber where Karen found 6 humans in holding cells. They looked disoriented and frightened. One was just a child, perhaps 12 years old. What is the meaning of this? Karen demanded, letting her anger show. You claimed there were no unauthorized humans being held. These specimens were processed before your status was registered, Mograx explained. Standard procedure for pre-contact. Species. Release them immediately, Karen ordered. That would require proper authorization from... Karen cut him off. I am the governor of human space in this sector. That is my authorization. The standoff was interrupted by alarms blaring. Throughout the station, a Taurian aide rushed in, speaking rapidly in their native language. Dr. Rodriguez translated quietly for Karen. They've detected our transmission to Earth. They know we're not official representatives. Karen made a split-second decision. She pressed a button on her wrist communicator, sending a signal to Lydia. Throughout the station, systems began to fail as the virus they had uploaded through the planted device activated. What have you done? Mograx demanded as the lights flickered. Plan B, Karen replied. She drew her concealed weapon and pointed it at the control panel for the holding cells. One shot disabled the locks, freeing the captive humans. Dylan, get them moving toward the ship, Karen ordered. Rodriguez, tell them to follow my son. Alan, cover the rear. As chaos erupted throughout the station, Karen faced the Taurian administrator. You should evacuate your people from this section. The life support systems are about to malfunction. This is an act of war, Mograx said, his massive frame looming over her. No, Karen replied. This is a mother protecting her child, and all the other children you've stolen. The war hasn't even started yet. They fought their way back to the Pathfinder, through corridors filled with confused station personnel dealing with failing systems. Lydia had the engines running when they arrived with the rescued humans. Get us out of here, Karen ordered as the airlock sealed behind them. The Pathfinder broke away from the station, dodging pursuit ships as it accelerated toward the jump point. Behind them, Outpost Krell 9 descended into confusion as systems continued to fail in cascading sequence. As they prepared for the jump to safety, Karen looked at the frightened humans they had rescued, then at her son, who was helping a young girl find a place to sit. Where are we going, Mom? Dylan asked. We can't go back to Earth. The Confederacy will follow us there. Karen studied the star map. We're going to Aldebaran. According to the station's records, there's a resistance movement there. Species who have been fighting Taurian rule for generations. If we're going to protect Earth, we'll need allies. As the Pathfinder jumped into faster-than-light travel, Karen added a new entry to the ship's log. The cargo is partially secured. Mission parameters expanded to include protection of home planet. The Aldebaran system was a stunning sight. The giant red star cast an orange glow over its 7 moons, each one hosting Taurian settlements. The Pathfinder dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, staying hidden behind the outermost moon. How do we find resistance fighters in an entire star system? Dylan asked as he looked at the display screen showing the massive gas giant planet with its orbiting moons. Karen studied the sensor readings. According to the data we took from Krell 9, Aldebaran III is their main processing center for adaptive resources. If there's resistance anywhere, it will be focused there. Dr. Rodriguez had been monitoring communications throughout the system. I'm picking up unusual signal patterns from the 6th moon. They don't match standard Confederate protocols. That could be our resistance, Karen said. Take us in, but keep the stealth systems active. As they approached Aldebaran 6, they saw why the Taurians had little interest in it. The moon was mostly ice, with temperatures far below freezing. No visible settlements marked its surface, just vast fields of white and blue ice. There's a hidden thermal signature, Lydia reported from the engineering station. Someone's generating heat under the surface. Karen directed the ship toward the thermal reading. As they drew closer, a signal suddenly came through their communication system. Unidentified vessel, identify yourself immediately or be destroyed. Karen exchanged glances with Rodriguez before responding. This is Karen Blackwell of Earth. We're seeking allies against the Taurian Confederacy. There was a long pause before the reply came. Landing coordinates are being transmitted to your navigation system. Any deviation will result in defensive measures. Following the coordinates led them to what appeared to be a solid ice field. As they hovered over the exact location, the ice below them split open, revealing a hidden hangar. Karen carefully guided the ship inside. Armed figures surrounded them as they landed, a mix of several alien species. Some had insect-like features with multiple limbs. Others appeared almost human except for their blue skin and webbed hands. A third group seemed to be made of living crystal. Karen led her small crew down the ramp, hands visible to show they weren't a threat. Dylan stayed close to her side. A tall blue-skinned alien stepped forward. I am Commander Neela of the Malosian Free Forces, she said through a translation device. You claim to be from Earth, yet you fly a modified Confederate scout vessel. Explain yourselves. Karen told their story simply, how her son had been taken, how she had pursued him across 3 star systems, and what they had learned about the Confederacy's plans for Earth. The commander listened without interruption. When Karen finished, Neela turned to her companions. The prophecy speaks of outsiders bringing the spark that ignites change. We don't know anything about prophecies, Karen said. We're just trying to save our world and get home. Perhaps that is why you are the ones, said a crystalline being, its voice creating musical tones as it spoke. The unwilling heroes often succeed where the ambitious fail. The resistance fighters led them deeper into the base, carved out of the ice moon's interior. It housed thousands of beings from dozens of species, all victims of Taurian oppression, who had escaped or been rescued over the centuries. In a large meeting chamber, Karen presented everything they had, learned about Confederate operations, including the data they had stolen from Krell 9. The resistance leaders were particularly interested in how Karen had infiltrated and disrupted 2 Confederate facilities. Your methods are unorthodox, said the insectoid leader, who had introduced himself as Zix of the Pelax Hive. The Confederacy has stood unchallenged for 11,000 years because they expect all resistance to follow patterns they understand. Humans don't follow patterns very well, Karen replied. We tend to improvise. That is exactly what makes you dangerous to them, Neela said, and valuable to us. The resistance had been fighting small battles against the Confederacy for generations, with little success. They lacked coordination and had never been able to strike at major targets effectively. Karen's background in military logistics gave her a unique perspective on their situation. You've been thinking too big, Karen told them as she studied their battle plans. You don't need to defeat their entire fleet. You just need to disrupt their supply chains. For 3 days, Karen worked with the resistance leaders, developing new strategies. Dylan surprised everyone with his insights into Taurian psychology, based on his observations during captivity. Their plans were coming together when the alarms sounded. 3 Taurian battlecruisers have entered orbit, a resistance fighter reported. They're searching for us. How did they find this base? Karen asked. Commander Neela looked grim. We've been compromised. They must have followed your ship. We were careful, Karen protested. It doesn't matter now, Zix said. We must evacuate. Karen studied the tactical display showing the Taurian cruisers. An idea formed in her mind. Risky, but possible. We don't need to run, she said. We can fight. Our ships are no match for Taurian cruisers, Neela argued. Not in direct combat. Karen agreed. But you have mining vessels, right? For extracting ice? The resistance had dozens of mining ships designed to cut through ice and transport it. Karen quickly explained her plan. While the Taurians would be expecting conventional resistance ships with weapons, they wouldn't be prepared for mining vessels on collision courses. We don't need to destroy their ships, Karen explained. Just disable their engines and weapons, then we can board them. The plan was desperate but caught the Taurians completely by surprise. Empty mining vessels, programmed to follow specific trajectories, hurtled toward the cruisers. While the Taurians focused on these decoys, the real attack came from repurposed mining lasers, powerful enough to cut through ice and now directed at the cruisers' weapon systems. Karen led one of the boarding parties herself, with Dylan safely back at the resistance base. Using tactics she had developed during their previous encounters, they overwhelmed the Taurian security teams, who were trained to fight conventional battles, not adapt to rapidly changing situations. Within hours, all 3 cruisers had been captured. The resistance fighters could hardly believe their victory. Nothing like this had happened in centuries of conflict with the Confederacy. As Karen stood on the bridge of the captured command cruiser, Neela approached her with a formal bow. "The Council of Free Species has voted. We want you to lead us." Karen laughed. "I'm not a revolutionary. I'm just a mom who got really annoyed when someone took my kid." "Perhaps that is exactly what we need," said Zix, joining them. "Someone who fights not for glory or power, but for protection of what matters." Dylan entered the bridge with a group of rescued humans they had found aboard the cruisers. "Mom, they say there are more humans at the processing center on Aldebaran 3. Karen looked at her son, then at the tactical display showing the 3 star systems they had traversed: Epsilon Eridani, Tau Ceti, and now Aldebaran. In just a few weeks, she had gone from a NASA logistics specialist to a revolutionary leader, all because she refused to give up searching for her child. "Well," she said with a small smile, "I guess we're not done yet." She turned to the resistance leaders. "Let's go get the rest of our people, then we'll talk about what comes next." As the captured cruisers and resistance fleet prepared to move, against the processing center, Karen added a final entry to the Pathfinder's log. "Cargo secured. New mission: securing freedom for all cargoes.